17 years. That's how long I gave them. And in less than 3 minutes, they took it all away. Daniel sat behind his glass desk, eyes cold as a server room. Ethan, the company's restructuring. Your position's been eliminated. No handshake, no thank you, just terminated. I handed over my badge, the same one I'd worn longer than his entire career, and watched him slide it across the desk like it was contaminated. Outside, the office was silent. Screens flickered. Nobody looked up. They were afraid to. But here's the thing about quiet men like me. We don't explode. We calculate. We remember every password, every system, every secret they think they erased. 17 years taught me one truth. Loyalty makes you invisible until you decide not to be. You think you've seen revenge stories before? You haven't. Hit subscribe and watch how this one turns. I walked past the row of empty desks I'd built my life around. The hum of computers filled the silence, same as every morning, only now it sounded colder. My son's old mug sat beside the monitor, chipped on the handle, world's best dad fading like a bad joke. Next to it, the small cactus that somehow survived 17 years under fluorescent light. I'd watered it twice a month, same as clockwork, same as me. I shut down my email. Screen went black. The reflection staring back looked older than I remembered. Tired eyes, a man who'd traded decades for loyalty. I picked up the box, walked to the elevator. Each step echoed. No goodbyes, no speeches, just the sound of dignity. Quiet, steady, still mine. Because sometimes walking away without a word hurts them more than anything you could ever say. The heat outside hit me like a wall. Texas sun, unforgiving, honest. My hand trembled slightly as the key slid into the ignition. For a second, I couldn't start the engine, just sat there, staring at the glass tower I'd kept alive through every crash, every patch, every midnight call. 17 years, and not one thank you. I could almost hear Daniel's voice echoing in my head. Restructuring. That's what they call betrayal now. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. They saw a man they could erase. But the truth? I'd built the backbone of that entire system. The locks, the trails, the hidden doors. They thought they'd shut me out. I smiled, low and quiet. They think I'm blind, I whispered. Let them. Blind men see things others never notice. By the time I reached home, the world felt smaller, quieter. The oak trees in our yard swayed like they knew something I didn't. Linda met me at the door, soft eyes, no questions, just a mug of coffee, the same kind she's made for 20 years. You okay? She asked. I nodded, too fast, a lie we both recognized. We sat on the porch. The wind carried the smell of cut grass, Sunday peace in the middle of a ruined Monday. I looked out at the street, the same houses, the same quiet safety I'd built for my family. Losing the job didn't scare me. What scared me was what I might do next. I needed space, distance, safety, not from them, but from my own anger. Because the moment you let rage drive, you crash. I wasn't going to crash. I was going to calculate. That night, after Linda went to bed, I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, a small metal box, dust-covered, untouched for years. USB drives, each labeled by hand. Audit logs, access reports, financial records. Every ghost of every file that ever passed through Redwood's servers. Back then, they called me paranoid for keeping off-site backups. Legal had even signed the papers. Forgot all about them afterward. Funny how memory works when guilt starts breathing down your neck. I plugged in one drive. The blue light blinked alive. Every line of code I'd written stared back like an old friend. Somewhere in there, I knew, was the truth. The thing they didn't want found. They'd fired me thinking they'd buried the evidence. But they forgot who built the grave. And I wasn't done digging yet. Scrolling through payment logs felt like reading an old crime novel. Only this one had my fingerprints all over it. Vendor, Apex Consulting Group. Registered to a UPS mailbox outside Dallas. Cute. Invoices started small, 10 grand here, 15 there, then ballooned every quarter. By the end, Payments had jumped nearly 20%. I followed the approval chain. Every single authorization routed through Brian Cooper, the CFO. Each number lined up too neatly, like someone rehearsing a lie. I sat back, the glow of the screen painting my face cold blue. That smell, that metallic mix of fear and greed, you don't forget it once you've worked in systems long enough. It wasn't just sloppy accounting, it was theft, polished to look like policy. For years I'd been keeping their house clean. Now I could finally see the dirt under the carpet. I cross-checked the payments with our license renewals, dates, amounts, serials. Half of them didn't match the legitimate vendor data. The pattern was precise, inflated charges paired with fake audit trails. Then the logs told me what I needed to know. 18 months ago, someone had quietly expanded user permissions on the financial servers. Access granted to one name only, Brian Cooper. I leaned closer to the screen, heart steady. There it was, digital fingerprints. Not guesses, not suspicions. Proof. The kind you can't delete because I designed the system to remember. For 17 years, I'd been the watchdog they ignored. Tonight, I was the wolf at the door. Daniel loved the word transformation. Every meeting, every memo, efficiency, innovation, digital future. What it really meant was this: carve out the old, replace it with people who don't ask questions. And then came Jason, the consultant with the perfect handshake and the too white smile. He started rearranging my department, reassigning projects, reducing my system privileges one by one. My name vanished from group emails. Files I'd maintained for decades suddenly belonged to someone else. That's when I understood. It wasn't restructuring. It was an erasure. They weren't just cutting costs, they were clearing the road, and I was the obstacle. Every good system hides a back door. They forgot who built theirs. Recognition. That's the one thing every man wants before he's replaced. For years, I thought if I just worked harder, loyalty would speak for itself. Turns out loyalty's mute in a room full of ambition. The anger came easy. Swallowing it was the hard part. I could have exposed them right then, sent the files, burned it all down. But rage is loud. Loud gets dismissed. So I opened a new folder, titled it Wednesday, and started building a timeline. Every transaction, every login, every lie. If they saw me as invisible, I'd use it. I'd win this one quietly, with precision, not noise. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. The next morning, I built a test email using an old internal security domain I'd created years ago. Looked official, untraceable to me. Subject line: financial irregularities, urgent review. Attached, a teaser report of the Apex payments, nothing incriminating yet, just enough to make Daniel sweat. I scheduled it for 9:15 a.m., right before his Monday briefing. Then I waited, watching the clock like it owed me something. The trick wasn't to accuse, it was to imply. In corporate America, panic fills silence faster than truth ever will. When the email left my outbox, I whispered to myself, let's see who bites first. If Daniel was clean, he'd investigate. If not, he'd make a move. Either way, the clock had started ticking. My phone rang before noon, Daniel's number flashing. I let it go. Minutes later, HR emailed, your recent communication violates confidentiality. That was fast. Funny thing, I never signed a separation agreement. No gag order, no leash. I leaned back, sipped my coffee, and smiled. The message was clear. They were scared. I'd seen that tone before in breach reports. People who realized too late that the data they deleted still exists somewhere. They wanted silence. What they got was uncertainty, and uncertainty is the one virus even firewalls can't stop. By lunch, I knew I'd struck the right nerve. They weren't calling me because I was gone. They were calling because they knew I was still in the system. I drove to the bank that afternoon, a quiet branch on the edge of town where no one asked questions. The clerk recognized me, small-town courtesy, and led me to the back. The vault door groaned open like an old confession. Inside my safe deposit box sat a single brown envelope, edges yellowed with time. Inside that, printouts of security protocols, access requests, and one critical document, the expansion form with Brian Cooper's signature. Date approved? The same week the Apex payments doubled. Every dotted line, every timestamp, every scribbled initial, it was all there. In IT, we call that a checksum, proof something hasn't been tampered with. I smiled as I sealed the envelope again. The story wasn't just mine anymore. Now it had a heartbeat, and its pulse ran straight through the CFO's pen. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Ethan, this is Jason Phillips, consultant for Redwood Technologies. Can we meet? Privately. His tone was smooth, corporate velvet wrapped around barbed wire. I said nothing. That evening, Linda called from home, her voice tight. Some guy stopped by the house, said it was urgent, said his name was Jason. I stared at the phone for a long time. They were moving fast now, testing boundaries, trying to read how much I knew. They thought they could intimidate me, but fear's a currency that only works if you spend it first. I'd spent mine years ago, somewhere between missed birthdays and unpaid overtime. I turned off the lights in my office and whispered, "You just blinked first." And in this kind of game, that's all that matters. Mark Taylor texted that night. Everyone's talking. They said you sent some kind of email. People are nervous. I could almost hear the worry in his words. He was 28, hungry to prove himself, the same way I once was. I typed back, "Don't get involved, kid. Just do your job." He replied, "This isn't right, Ethan." I paused, staring at the screen. He reminded me why I'd started this in the first place, not for revenge, but for the ones who still believed doing things right mattered. He didn't deserve to be collateral damage in someone else's greed. So I did what any decent man would do. I protected him by keeping him in the dark. Sometimes leadership isn't about leading people into battle. It's about knowing which ones to keep safe from it. I spent the next day turning chaos into structure. Every payment, every email, every access log, lined up, labeled, cross-checked. I built an Excel sheet that could make sense even to the boardroom dinosaurs who'd never written a line of code in their lives. Then I charted the rise of the apex payments. Smooth, steep, deliberate. Green bars for normal, red for inflated. By the end, the screen looked like a wound bleeding upward. I printed everything, stacked it neatly in a folder labeled Presentation Ready. Because in this world, data doesn't win arguments, clarity does. This wasn't just a leak waiting to happen. It was a story waiting to be told. And I'd just finished writing the first chapter. What came next would decide who still had a career and who didn't. That night, I sat on the porch again. The cicadas hummed. The porch light flickered against the dark. I thought about 17 years, missed dinners, late deployments, server rooms colder than marriage anniversaries. The kids growing up while I was rebooting systems. The times Linda waited up just to say goodnight to a husband half asleep at the keyboard. For what? A box and a badge. But even through the bitterness, there was pride, real pride. I'd built something no one could erase. They could take my title, my paycheck, my access, but not the respect I'd earned from those who mattered. Respect's not given in meetings. It's built in quiet rooms at 2 a.m. when no one's watching. I looked up at the sky and said it out loud, just once. I deserved better. And for the first time, I actually believed it. I needed someone inside, someone who still believed in the idea of right and wrong. Robert Chen came to mind. He'd been on the board back when I built the company's first audit system. A quiet man, straight shooter, the kind who still read the fine print no one else bothered with. I dug through my old contacts until his number appeared, half faded on an ancient business card. I hesitated. Calling him meant crossing the point of no return. Then I pressed call. 1 ring, 2. Robert Chen. That voice, steady, familiar, like a hand on your shoulder in a storm. I didn't have to explain much. He listened, asked 2 questions, then said, "Meet me tomorrow, somewhere off the record." I hung up, the first real air in my lungs all week. Finally, someone else who got it. We met at a small park on the edge of town, old benches, kids playing somewhere in the distance. Robert arrived early, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled, the kind of man who didn't waste words. I handed him a sealed envelope and a USB drive. "This has everything," I said. "Dates, names, signatures. I don't want money. I just want the truth seen." He studied me for a moment, eyes sharp but kind. "You sure you're ready for what comes with this?" "I've been ready since Monday." He nodded once, slipped the envelope inside his briefcase. "I'll read it tonight." When he left, the wind picked up, scattering dry leaves around my feet. For the first time in days, I felt the ground shift. Not against me, but for me. The quiet man finally had an ally. But alliances have shadows, and someone was already watching. They took 17 years from me. I'm giving them 17 hours. And when the clock hits 0, no one at Redwood will sleep again. That night, I built my final move, a timed email, set to deliver to every board member at exactly 8 o'clock a.m. Subject line, before you approve Q2 bonuses, read this. Attached, a report that tied every fraudulent wire, every inflated invoice, straight back to Brian Cooper and Daniel Harris. I checked the encryption keys twice, tested the access tokens. Every detail tight, clean, untraceable. Corporate fraud loves ambiguity. I was giving them clarity, surgical, undeniable. But before I hit send, I did one more thing. Hidden inside the report, buried in the metadata, was a checksum loop, a signature only I could recognize. If anyone tried to alter the file, even by a comma, it would trigger a silent forward to an off-site compliance server, the same one Daniel once bragged about never needing. They thought I was just sending an email. What I really did was wake the system up. Then I set the timer, 8 o'clock sharp. In 17 hours, everything they'd built on lies would start to crumble. The funny thing about countdowns, once you start them, there's no turning back. I closed the laptop, the hum of the hard drive fading like the last breath before a storm. That night was quiet. Too quiet. Linda came out to the porch, her robe brushing against my arm. "You okay?" she asked softly. I stared at the dark street, the porch light flickering across our wedding ring shadows. "I'm doing the right thing," I said. "For once, that has to be enough." She didn't say anything, just rested her hand on my shoulder. That simple touch did more for me than any paycheck ever had. We sat there a long while, neither of us speaking. For the first time since it all began, I wasn't angry. I was focused. When she went back inside, I leaned back, eyes on the stars. Tomorrow, the storm would hit. Tonight, I needed peace strong enough to face it. Because once the clock struck 8, there'd be no turning back. I only slept 3 hours, but it was the best sleep I'd had in years. 7:59. The sun cut through the blinds, streaks of gold across the kitchen table. Steam rose from my coffee like smoke before a battle. My laptop clock ticked over. 8 o'clock a.m. Click. The email launched. No sound. No fireworks. Just one tiny digital heartbeat echoing across corporate servers. I closed the lid, leaned back, and waited. 5 minutes later, my phone vibrated. Then again, and again. Unknown numbers. Then Daniel's name appeared, over and over. I didn't answer. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window like applause. You can almost feel it, the moment the truth starts moving through the wires, lighting up inboxes, freezing hearts. That's when I smiled. Because for the first time in 17 years, they were the ones afraid to pick up the phone. By 9 a.m., the phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Numbers I didn't recognize, all with the same kind of panic in their area code. I let every one of them ring out. Somewhere downtown, the finance committee was meeting. 9 o'clock sharp. The same room where they'd approved those fake invoices a dozen times before. I pictured them opening their laptops, seeing the subject line. Before you approve Q2 bonuses, read this. The truth, delivered right to their inboxes. I packed my things and drove to Maple in Maine, the little cafe with bad coffee and good silence. I sat by the window, laptop in front of me, watching traffic flow past. Somewhere in that stream of cars, my entire career was unraveling and rebuilding at the same time. I didn't need to be in that boardroom. They'd already seen everything. Now they had to face it. Now they had to look at the truth. My phone buzzed again. This time a text from Mark. "Police are here. Jason looks pale. Daniel's in a separate room. Brian's sweating bullets. What did you do?" I read it twice, slow. A long breath filled the space between me and the world falling apart on the other side of town. It had started. After all the silence, all the restraint, the machine was finally turning on itself. Jason, the slick consultant, caught off guard. Daniel, the visionary, cornered by his own buzzwords. Brian, the numbers man, drowning in his own spreadsheets. The wheel of justice doesn't move fast, but when it starts, it grinds everything in its way. I set the phone down, stirred my coffee, and watched the swirl fade into stillness. After 17 years of keeping things running, it felt strange, watching the system crash for once. Then, on the news ticker, a line flashed. SEC opens investigation into Redwood Technologies. I hadn't sent anything to them, which meant only one thing: the checksum worked. The system I built had finally done what no one else would: report itself. At noon, my cell lit up again. Corporate number. "Mr. Miller?" a woman's voice said, clipped and cautious. "This is Patricia from Redwood's legal team. We'd like to meet in person, today." I let her talk, then said, "No meetings." "Sir, we really think—" "I have multiple backups," I cut in 3 different locations, and if anything happens to me or my wife, copies go to the SEC, the IRS, and 3 major news outlets. Silence. You could hear her swallow on the line. "Mr. Miller, that won't be necessary. It already is." I hung up, heart steady, no tremor in my hand. Funny thing about fear, it changes address fast. This morning, it lived with me. By noon, it had moved into their offices. By early afternoon, I was an hour outside Austin. Stopped at a roadside diner where no one knew my name. Ordered a sandwich I didn't finish. Stared at my phone screen instead. Local business feed. Executives under investigation at Redwood Technologies. No names yet, but they would come. A slow grin tugged at the corner of my mouth. For years I'd kept fires from spreading. Patches, protocols, prevention. Now, watching one burn down the right building felt righteous. I leaned back, the hum of old neon signs buzzing overhead. No celebration, just a deep exhale that felt like justice in the lungs. The truth was finally louder than their lies, and it was doing exactly what it was built to do: spread. That evening I called Robert. He answered on the first ring. "It's happening," I said. "I know," he replied. "Emergency board session. Forensic teams on site Monday. 3 executives suspended until further notice." I didn't speak for a moment. Just listened to the sound of victory humming low and steady in his voice. He continued, "You did the right thing, Ethan. You gave them no choice but to act." I nodded, though he couldn't see it. The first punch had landed, not out of vengeance, but out of balance finally restored. When the call ended, I sat there in my car, hands still on the wheel, engine off, heart quiet. For the first time in 17 years, I wasn't part of the system. I was the correction. By the weekend, 2 job offers landed in my inbox, both from companies that used to compete with Redwood. 6 figures, signing bonuses, corner offices. For a moment, I stared at the numbers, the kind of offers that make a man forget why he got out in the first place. Then I closed both emails, turned off notifications, and shut the laptop. This wasn't about money anymore. For 17 years, I'd traded pieces of myself for stability. One late night, one missed birthday, one quiet compromise at a time. Now I finally understood. Dignity's not something you negotiate. You either keep it or you sell it, and I'd already spent too long selling. But here's the thing about revenge. Once you taste justice, it's easy to overdose, and I was standing one decision away from becoming the man I exposed. So I made my choice. No revenge tour, no public spectacle, just a clean ending on my own terms. Sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is walk away without losing himself. But peace has a strange way of testing whether you really mean it. Mark kept popping into my thoughts. The kid had potential, sharp, loyal, still believed good work mattered. I pulled out a notebook and started jotting notes. Training ideas, security reforms, ways to build a department that protected people, not power. If I ever went back, he'd be my first promotion. He reminded me of a younger version of myself, before cynicism, before politics, back when I still believed systems could be built to protect instead of control. Legacy isn't about buildings or titles. It's about leaving a blueprint someone decent can follow. So I wrote his name at the top of the page. Mark Taylor, future lead. For the first time in a while, I didn't feel bitter. I felt ready to pass something on. Revenge fades, and purpose sticks. I went back through Jason's contracts one by one, consulting agreements with no audits, approvals rushed through without signatures, invoices processed outside procurement protocols. Every trail led to the same destination, my removal. Jason wasn't there to modernize anything. He was a cleanup man, hired to cut out the one person who might notice the pattern. I built a new section in the report titled Operational Manipulation, Phase 1. Under it I added, Jason Phillips, consultant, hired to restructure IT, purpose, erase audit trail. The evidence wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. I'd learned that truth doesn't shout, it waits. And once it's fully formed, it doesn't ask for permission to be seen. I clicked save. One more nail in their coffin, driven in quietly, with precision. I wasn't done. A new name appeared in the financial web, Lakeside Business Solutions. Looked harmless at first, like a vendor from a small town. But the registration was under Patricia Cooper, Brian's wife. The address? A virtual office outside Dallas. I traced the invoices. Same trick, different disguise. Consulting fees, license renewals, inflated, subtle, consistent. By the time I tallied the totals, the number hit just over $4 million. $4 million siphoned from budgets that should have paid people who actually worked. I leaned back, staring at the spreadsheet. People think corruption's flashy. It's not. It's slow, boring, paper deep, but it rots everything from the inside out. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't fighting men anymore. I was fighting rot, and rot spreads fast when you start pulling at it. When I finally laid everything out, the picture snapped into focus. Brian Cooper, the CFO, had the money. Daniel Harris, the director, provided cover, budget increases, innovation talk, smokescreens. And Jason Phillips, the consultant, was the executioner, clean, efficient, expendable. 3 men, 1 scheme, millions stolen. The board had been blindfolded with buzzwords while the drain ran right under their feet. It was elegant, in a disgusting kind of way. A perfect loop of greed, protected by paperwork and confidence. I printed the final page of my report and read the title out loud. System Compromise, Human Origin. It sounded cold, clinical, exactly the way I wanted it. Because the story wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about logic catching up to lies. And when logic arrives, no one escapes. I built a one-pager for the busy people, the kind who skim and still think they've read. Top left, a clean timeline from month 1 to month 18, green bars for normal spend, red spikes where Apex and Lakeside bled us dry. Right side, 3 boxes labeled who, how, proof, who, Brian, Daniel, Jason, how, inflated invoices, bypassed procurement, silent permission escalations, proof, signatures, server logs, vendor registrations, bank timestamps. At the bottom, a simple infographic. 5.2 M, projected loss if unchecked. No drama, just math. I printed 10 copies on thick paper, the kind that feels serious in your hands. I slid one into my bag and stared at the title, Redwood, Internal Integrity Brief, simple, sharp, unmistakable. This wasn't a rant. It was a weapon built for boardrooms, and it was finally sharp enough to cut. Back home, Linda met me at the door. You done? Almost, I said. She studied my face like she used to when the kids were little and feverish. Don't let this swallow you, she whispered. Win, then come home. I nodded. I knew what she meant. There's a line where justice ends and obsession starts. I'd seen too many men cross it and never come back. I poured us both iced tea and sat at the kitchen table, oak nicked by 1,000 family dinners. In that light, the fight didn't feel heroic. It felt necessary. I stacked the files, closed the folder, and placed it at the center like a promise I meant to keep. Win clean. Leave it there. I kissed her forehead and said, I'm not losing myself over this. Her smile told me I'd just made the right kind of vow. On the porch, memory hit like an old song. I heard the jokes again. Legacy guy, old school, dinosaur. Heard the laugh when I said we still needed guardrails around finance access. Thing is, the dinosaurs built the server rooms that never went down. We kept the lights on when the cloud had a storm. I thought about the nights I slept under my desk during cutovers, the mornings I walked out smelling like cold air and coffee. They called it old. What they meant was dependable. I laughed, low and honest. Turns out being outdated is what saved the company, because the only reason those logs still existed is that an old dog insisted they should. Respect isn't loud. It's built in the background, line by line, until the day someone needs it, and there it is, unblinking. My self-respect came back like a switch flipping on. They asked me to come in. Glass boardroom, cold air, the city stacked behind them like a warning. Interim CEO sat at the head, hands clasped, eyes careful. Robert gave me a small nod, the kind that says, "You're not alone this time." I laid my one-pager on the table. No speeches, no heat. "Before we talk jobs," I said, "we talk safeguards." Silence settled. I could feel the room testing my temperature. I kept it steady. This isn't about me getting even. It's about Redwood never needing someone like me to clean up again. I slid a second folder forward, thicker, heavier. Everything you need to fix what's broken, but it only works if someone has the authority to use it. Heads tilted. Time to stop hinting. I placed my terms on the glass like a final card. Independent audit authority, I said, across all departments, no exceptions. Direct reporting line to the board, standing agenda, quarterly, and ad hoc. Budget control for security and finance tech intersections, veto power when risk exceeds ROI. And a separate protected fund for incident response. We don't bargain with fires. Their eyes moved, one to another, like a circuit testing load. I didn't fill the silence. "This is unusual," the interim CEO said finally. "So was siphoning millions while everyone smiled for earnings calls." I stood, slid the page toward her. "Decide by noon." No anger, no bluff, just a deadline. Countdowns make people honest. I walked out with my folder under my arm and my dignity where it belonged, on my shoulders, not theirs. By the elevator, my phone buzzed. I didn't check it. Some clocks you let the other side hear tick. The meeting ended without a handshake. Just nods, tight lips, and the sound of paper sliding across glass. I stepped into the hallway, long, bright, sterile. Every footstep echoed like punctuation. At the end, the security guard looked up from his station. The same guy who'd once watched me hand over my badge. He stood a little straighter, nodded. "Welcome back, Mr. Miller." I didn't say a word, just returned the nod, slow, measured. No victory speech, no swagger. Revenge loses its value the moment you announce it. This wasn't about showing them I'd won. It was about proving I didn't need to fight dirty to win. In the reflection of the elevator doors, I saw it clearly. My face calm, shoulders square, no anger left. Quiet justice. That's what this was always about. Back home, I brewed coffee and waited for the phone call. If they said no, I'd still be fine. But if they said yes, it would mean I could rebuild this company the right way. That thought pulled something old and alive inside me. For years, I'd been maintaining systems written by men who'd stopped caring. Now I had a chance to build one that outlasted greed. A system that guarded people, not profits. That's what self-respect looks like when it grows up. It stops chasing validation and starts creating value. I looked over my notes, a plan already forming in my head. Layered access, independent audits, mentorship for the next generation. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was redemption with architecture, and I was finally ready to build something worth my time. At 11:47, the phone finally rang. Robert's voice was steady, almost relieved. "They've agreed to every condition, full authority, full budget." For a long second, I didn't say anything. Then a quiet breath left me. Not a laugh, not even a smile, just release. In the reflection of the window, I saw a man who didn't need applause. I'd walked through humiliation, silence, rage, and came out cleaner than when I went in. The fight was over. But the work, that was just starting. "Tell them," I said. "I'll see them Monday." When I hung up, Linda walked by, towel in hand, eyebrow raised. "They said yes?" I nodded once. She smiled. That was enough celebration for me. The first month back was quiet, productive. No speeches, no parades, just a man cleaning house. We audited every access point, revoked dormant accounts, and implemented two-step approvals on financial systems. I set up real-time alerts through our CM, every irregular login, every data shift, visible in seconds. For the first time in years, the servers felt alive. It wasn't about control, it was about awareness. Accountability coded into the very heartbeat of the system. Every evening I'd walk the floor, nodding at the team still working. No fear now, just focus. It hit me then. This is what security really means. Not locks and firewalls. It's people who know someone's watching, not to catch them, but to protect what matters. The system wasn't the only thing awake. I was too. One afternoon, Mark knocked on my door, hesitant. "Got a minute?" "Always," I said. He walked in, nervously holding a report. He'd caught a small anomaly, a payment authorization delay no one else noticed. He explained it clearly, calm, confident. I looked at him and saw the same fire I used to have before time and routine dulled it. "You handled it right," I said. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. "Thanks, sir." "Don't thank me," I replied. "Just keep doing it right, even when nobody's watching." He nodded, smiling for the first time. As he left, I called out, "Mark." He turned. "I see you." That line stayed with him. Because once upon a time, I'd needed someone to say the same to me, and no system runs right without that kind of recognition built in. 2 weeks later, I stood at the front of the auditorium, same place they'd once announced layoffs. This time, the message was different. I spoke about transparency, about courage, about accountability being everyone's job, not just Eads. Then I announced a new policy: open audit reports, quarterly access reviews, and a confidential hotline where anyone could report misconduct. No fear, no filters. Someone asked, "Will that make people paranoid?" I shook my head. No, it makes them safe. Silence followed, the good kind, the kind that means people are thinking. I looked across the crowd and saw heads nodding, hands taking notes. For once, the system wasn't protecting executives. It was protecting the people who actually made things work. And in that moment, I realized something strange. To save a company, sometimes you have to burn its comfort. That's the paradox of real integrity. The forensic team delivered their findings in a 60-page report. Total losses, $5.2 million. CFO Brian Cooper pled guilty. Daniel Harris denied everything, lawyered up, already rehearsing his victim speech. Jason Phillips, gone. Slipped out of the country 2 days before the warrant dropped. It didn't matter. The board froze their accounts, recovered most of the funds, and filed charges anyway. Justice wasn't quick, but it was thorough. When the headlines hit, I didn't feel triumph. Just closure. Brian's mugshot made the rounds online. He looked smaller somehow, like guilt had taken his height. I closed the browser. I didn't need to see them punished to feel right. I just needed to know the truth had made it out of the servers and into daylight. And now, it finally had. Late one night, I sat alone in my new office. The skyline of Austin stretched outside the glass, clean, sharp, expensive. City lights blinked like endless notifications I'd never catch up on. But behind that glow, I could almost see home. The wooden porch, the sound of cicadas, Linda's quiet laughter under the oak tree. Power looks good from the outside. Peace feels better from the inside. I leaned back in the chair that wasn't mine 6 months ago and thought about everything it cost to get here. Titles don't mean much when the people who love you can't recognize you anymore. I'd almost become the kind of man I was fighting against. Almost. I shut off the monitor, left the reports unfinished. Some nights, the best system upgrade is knowing when to walk away from the screen. The following month, we launched an internal ethics training. No slides, no buzzwords, just real stories. Anonymous case studies from Redwood's own past, stripped of names but heavy with truth. Mark led the session, hands trembling at first, voice growing stronger with every question. Someone asked, "Was this based on what happened last quarter?" He glanced at me. "Let's just say we learned the hard way," he replied. The room laughed softly, not nervously. For once, it was relief. I stood in the back, letting him lead. He didn't need me hovering. He just needed to know I was there. When it ended, people lingered, talking about what doing the right thing actually looks like day to day. For the first time in years, the department felt alive, and belonging was finally back in the room. Friday, Linda met me out front for lunch. No headlines, no chaos, just sunlight and a woman who'd waited through every long night without complaint. We walked to the cafe down the street, holding hands like teenagers pretending not to be middle-aged. She ordered soup. I got the same sandwich I always did. For 30 minutes, we talked about everything except work. The kids, the neighbor's new dog, the way the oak leaves back home were starting to turn. It felt easy again. I'd spent months fighting to rebuild systems, but the truth was simpler. Peace isn't a project. It's maintenance. As we left, she squeezed my hand. Still think it was worth it? I looked at her, smiled small. Yeah, I said. Every line of code. I wrote a short internal memo titled Bridges. Just one page. Plain, direct, human. It started with a line I wish someone had told me years ago. Don't destroy what broke you. Fix what allowed it to break. I reminded the team that revenge doesn't build anything, systems or people. Repair does. I ended with, we don't fight enemies here, we fight errors. Then I printed it, framed it, and hung it in the IT lounge, above the coffee machine where everyone stopped at least once a day. No corporate speech, no glossy poster, just quiet words from someone who'd lived the lesson. When Mark saw it, he nodded, almost to himself. Maybe wisdom isn't about what you survive. It's about how calmly you choose to keep building after. And calm is a choice I make every morning now. Rebuilding the procurement process took weeks. Every vendor contract reviewed, every payment chain rebuilt from scratch. We introduced verification for beneficial ownership. No more fake shells hiding behind P.O. boxes or UPS stores. The new system flagged any vendor with recycled addresses or shared account routing. The same loophole Apex had used now triggered a bright red warning. One morning an alert popped up, another small firm trying the same trick. This time, it never got past stage 1. I leaned back, arms crossed, watching the system do what it was always meant to do, protect itself. It wasn't just about closing a hole in the firewall. It was about closing a chapter in the company's history where silence equaled trust. Now, every dollar had a trace, and every trace had a name. Apex was gone. For good. Hiring season came fast. Resumes stacked high, each one promising expertise, efficiency, innovation. But I wasn't looking for brilliance this time. I was looking for honesty. In interviews, I'd ask one question. Tell me about the last mistake you owned. Some froze, some lied. The ones who spoke plainly, the ones who didn't sugarcoat failure, those were the hires. When Mark sat beside me in the final interview, he caught my glance and smiled. We were planting something real this time. Not flashy talent, not inflated titles, just roots deep enough to hold when the next storm came. As the last candidate left, Mark said quietly, "Feels different now." "Yeah," I said. "It's supposed to." Integrity isn't something you inherit, it's something you replant, one good person at a time. At a company Q&A, someone finally asked the question everyone was thinking. "Ethan, why didn't you destroy them? You had enough evidence to bury every one of them." The room went still. I took a sip of water, looked around at the faces, some waiting for vengeance, others for validation. "I didn't destroy them," I said, "because I fix systems. I don't break machines." Murmurs spread. Revenge feels good for a minute, but rebuilding, that's what lasts. That's what protects the next person from becoming me. You could feel it land. I wasn't preaching. I was just telling the truth. Because every man in that room knew what it felt like to want payback, and how empty it would have been. Justice isn't fire, it's maintenance. Late one night, my inbox pinged with an old name, someone from my department who'd kept quiet when I was fired. "Ethan, I'm sorry for not saying anything. We all knew it was wrong. I just didn't have your courage." I stared at the screen a long time before typing back. "You don't owe me an apology. You just owe yourself a better line in the sand next time." Then I added, "I understand. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to carry the weight any longer." The next morning, he replied with just 2 words: "Thank you." And for once, it didn't feel like weakness. It felt like release. Like the company, the people, even I, were finally catching up to the same truth. You can't fix systems without healing the people who run them. A headline caught my eye that morning: "Former director denies all allegations." Daniel's face stared back from the business section. Same polished grin, same empty confidence. He blamed disgruntled staff, internal miscommunication, even an overly zealous whistleblower. They called me that, zealous. I closed the paper, didn't finish the article. No statement, no rebuttal, no press release. The law would handle what pride wanted to argue. Because sometimes noise feeds the wrong wolf. And silence, that quiet, patient kind, isn't surrender. It's strength sharpening itself. Let him talk. Every word he spoke dug the hole deeper, while I stayed exactly where I belonged, outside the mess, watching it collapse on its own. By the time his lawyer finished the tour, no one believed him anyway. There's power in restraint, especially when truth's already working for you. By spring, Jason Phillips made the news. Consultant extradited to U.S. for corporate fraud. The man who once bragged about being untouchable now wore handcuffs that matched his cufflinks. The article called it a landmark case in corporate accountability. Redwood's stock wobbled but held. The board issued statements about learning from our mistakes. That's corporate, for we finally got caught. They organized ethics workshops, quarterly reviews, PR campaigns to calm the investors. The cost of the lesson? Roughly $5 million and a piece of the company's soul. But for once, the tuition had been paid in full. Watching it unfold, I didn't feel joy, just completion. Everyone had finally faced their consequences, even the ones who thought they never would. Justice doesn't rush. It circles quietly and lands when the noise stops. The IT team hung a framed picture in the break room, just a casual group shot from a Friday meeting. Mark stood dead center, smiling like he belonged there. Behind him, the rest of the team laughed mid-conversation. I was in the back, slightly out of focus, hands in my pockets. When I saw it, I didn't move closer. Didn't need to. It was perfect. They didn't frame it to honor me. They framed it to remember us. The department wasn't about one man fixing a system anymore. It was about a group of people strong enough to keep it running right. I smiled quietly as they pinned it to the wall. Legacy isn't a nameplate or a title. It's a team photo where everyone's still smiling after the storm. Saturday morning. No alarms, no emails, no urgent calls. Just a can of paint, a brush, and the familiar creak of the porch under my feet. The oak tree swayed gently in the Texas sun, scattering bits of light across the railings. Linda handed me a glass of iced tea. "You missed a spot," she teased. I grinned, dipped the brush again. The neighbor's dog barked somewhere, the sound carrying across the fence. For 17 years, my world was servers, access logs, and uptime reports. Now, it was wood grain and summer breeze. I didn't need power or revenge or recognition. Just this: quiet, clean, mine. As the paint dried, I realized peace doesn't arrive like thunder. It sneaks up, sits beside you, and stays when you finally made room for it. That evening, as I was shutting down for the night, I found an envelope slipped under my office door. No name, no signature, just a folded note. Inside, one sentence written in careful handwriting: "You gave us hope that good people still matter." I read it twice before folding it again. Then I tucked it into my wallet, right behind a photo of my son. Respect isn't loud applause or public recognition. It's the quiet kind that shows up when no one's watching, when someone you barely know decides to say thank you. That note weighed less than paper, but more than any paycheck I'd ever earned. Because that's all I ever wanted. Not a title, not revenge, just a little proof that decency still leaves a mark. And now, I had it. Monday morning, I logged into the new dashboard. The lines ran smooth and steady across the screen. No spikes, no breaches, no red flags. Green across the board. Audit reports were clean, approval times shorter, and the cost of financial processing down 12% since the overhaul. 12%. Funny how integrity pays better than fraud ever did. I printed the report and set it on my desk, letting the numbers speak for themselves. For years, I'd tried to argue ethics with words, policies, meetings. Turns out the best argument is a stable graph. You can't debate a clean line. That's the thing about data. It doesn't care about politics or ego. It just tells the truth. And today, the truth said loud and clear, doing things right doesn't just feel good, it works. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Robert Chen. Security budget approved, unanimous vote. 2 words. That was all it took. Unanimous. I sat back reading it again, letting it sink in. A few months ago, those same board members had been too busy to even look my way. Now they were voting, together, for the very systems that once made them uncomfortable. I typed one reply. Thank you. No speech, no pride, just gratitude. Because this wasn't about me winning. It was about fear finally giving way to trust. In business, trust is the rarest currency. Once it shows up, you protect it like gold. For the first time in years, I felt something stronger than vindication. I felt steady, and that's worth more than any headline. Walking the hallway at Redwood felt different now. No whispers behind doors, no glances that turned away too quick, just nods. Simple, respectful, a few smiles, the kind that didn't need words. I passed the glass office where Daniel once sat, empty now, repurposed into a meeting room. Mark waved from the far end of the hall, mid-conversation with the new hires. I raised a hand back. No spotlight, no applause, just belonging. The quiet, earned kind. That's how you know you've built something right, when people aren't afraid anymore. The company wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was honest now. And so was I. As I reached the elevator, the guard nodded again. Same words, same tone. Welcome back, Mr. Miller. This time I smiled. Because finally, I was. Here's what I learned when everything broke. Being underestimated is a weapon. Quiet, sharp, patient. Justice doesn't need to be loud. It needs to be precise. Bridges don't always burn. Sometimes they collapse under their own greed. And when they do, you decide who you'll be on the other side. I didn't torch the place that hurt me. I fixed the system that let it happen. Not for them, for the people who come after. That's what dignity does. It leads when anger wants the wheel. It keeps your hands steady. It builds line by line until the truth holds on its own. So no, I don't burn bridges. I build new ones. Stronger, cleaner, honest. And if you've ever given years of your life and been repaid with silence or betrayal, you know why that matters. If this story felt like yours, drop a "I understand." Share it with someone who needs a spine today. Subscribe to follow the next chapter. The work isn't over, but now it's ours.